Hello and welcome to StudyIQ. I am your friend Rahul Saigaonker. The agenda for today's discussion is peacekeeping. You must be wondering, so why are we discussing about peacekeeping now? In the last couple of days, there have been multiple reports which are connected to United Nations peacekeeping or their peacekeeping operations. Let's look at some of the news reports. The first one, it reads, India to train ASEAN women in United Nations peacekeeping operations. A very good example even for IR answer writing. India-ASEAN relations. India is going to train ASEAN women contingent towards UN peacekeeping operations. Another report read that Indian Army recently celebrated 75th International Day of United Nations Peacekeepers. Another news report read that India is proud of its history of UN peacekeeping, and in the last 75 odd years, we have contributed more than 2.5 lakh troops towards UN peacekeeping operations. So I thought, let's have a comprehensive discussion about UN peacekeeping itself. So what are we going to understand in this video lecture? The first thing is, what is UN peacekeeping? What is the need of these peacekeeping operations? We'll also talk about the history of UN peacekeeping because we need to know about International Day of UN Peacekeepers. Then in the latter half, we will talk about India and India's role in UN peacekeeping operations. We are very proud of our history. Now, what is this history? And it is a very relevant and a very important topic for exam. Let's begin our discussion with a question. A simple question. It reads, India's engagement and commitment in support of peace operations has been critical one with significant troop and police contribution towards the United Nations peacekeeping. You need to comment on this statement. Now, to attempt this question, you will get excellent content, especially in the latter half, when we'll talk about India and UN peacekeeping. So to get to know all that information, be with me till the very end. Right, let's begin our discussion. But before that, if you're preparing for UPSC Civil Services examination, then today is the penultimate day to admit or get yourself enrolled for these programs. Batch 6 and Batch 7, morning and evening batch of Prelims to interview program are closing out. So you have just a few hours to enroll yourself. Now, why do you have to enroll for this? Because these are the most comprehensive programs for UPSC Civil Service preparation. Because we will be hand-holding you from prelims till your interview. And if you clear your preliminary examination 2024, the entire expenses of your mains residential program would be taken care of by StudyIQ. The program already consists of mock interviews, one-to-one mentorship, group mentorship, current affairs program, the mains answer writing program, the prelims test series, everything is included in the price of 29,999. And if you want heaviest of the discounts, then you have to use my code Rahul Live across the formats, that is the website or the app. But do join very, very soon, because if you lose this opportunity, then you would be missing out on the most comprehensive program. I'll see you in the class. Right. Let's begin our discussion. Our discussion is connected to United Nations peacekeeping. And I told you, why are we discussing this? Because recently, Indian Army on May 29, 2023, this is May 29 is the International Day of UN Peacekeepers. On that day, Indian Army commemorated the 75th International Day of UN Peacekeepers, where our soldiers paid homage to the sacrifice towards UN peacekeepers who lost their lives in peacekeeping operations. Apart from that, another news came. I also told you that India has proposed an initiative of women in United Nations peacekeeping operation, where India will be training ASEAN women contingent towards UN peacekeeping operations, because we already have experience of that. So we'll talk about these news also, but let's begin with the basics. The first thing is, what is UN peacekeeping? See, UN peacekeeping means United Nations intervening for maintaining peace. The question is, why do we need such peacekeeping? Now, to understand that, we need to talk about World War I and World War II. The world has witnessed two wars which led to catastrophe, loss of lives, and economic loss to the tune of millions of dollars and millions of lives in both World War I and World War II. And that is why there was a need which was felt that we need a body which would maintain peace and stability globally. And that is why United Nations came into existence. Now, you do know that UN itself does not have its army. UN is like a mediator. United Nations is a model of collective security where all the members of United Nations would be contributing towards its security or global security, I would say. Now, we all know human nature is also a nature of competition. Human nature is driven by pleasure and pain, right? So competition and conflict is bound to happen. In fact, after the existence of United Nations in 1945, the world was divided between two blocks, USSA and USSR bloc. And we saw many conflicts. We saw conflicts in East Germany, West Germany, in North Korea, South Korea. The world was divided. North Korea, South Korea, Korean conflict, Vietnam conflict, the conflict in West Asia. So we were looking at a volatile world. And United Nations, its prime objective is to maintain peace and stability at the global level and to ensure that it needs its own force, and that is the UN peacekeeping force. The first thing is, it is not a United Nations force. The countries would be contributing their troops for working for United Nations. That's why India has contributed many of its soldiers, many of its police for working towards United Nations. Now, why would we need it? Because there would be many conflicting regions. Say, if two parties are at conflict, at war, party X and party Y, country X and country Y, if they are, say, fighting a war based on territory, and there is a lot of destruction, lot of loss of life, then United Nations has to intervene. That is when the UN peacekeeping force comes into existence. It comes into action to ensure that region, it sees peace, it sees a transition from situation of conflict towards peace. And one of such first force was set up in 1948. In 1948, on May 29, first United Nations peacekeeping force was deployed in Palestine, in West Asian region. After that, United Nations has continued with peacekeeping operations in many locations. As of today, 12 UN peacekeeping operations are running. We know that in many areas, in many African regions, in many Asian regions, in many West Asian regions, conflicts continuously brew even till today. And that's why UN is involved in peacekeeping operations. So peacekeepers, they provide security as well as political and peace building support to ensure that there is a transition from conflict towards peace. That's the ultimate objective of UN peacekeeping. So the question is, sir, I understood UN peacekeeping, but I want to know, say, imagine if two parties are in conflict, X and Y, can United Nations unilaterally or directly send a peacekeeping force? The answer would be no, or at least the answer would be not really. Why? Because UN peacekeeping is bound by three principles. The first principle is that it needs consent of both the parties, meaning if country X and country Y are at conflict, then United Nations can send peacekeepers only if X and Y agree for some sort of armistice agreement or some sort of ceasefire agreement, so that UN would intervene or UN peacekeeping force would intervene. They would ensure peace and see a transition, make sure that there is some sort of peace agreement and civilian lives are not lost. Apart from that, another guiding principle is impartiality. United Nations peacekeepers and UN should not be biased or impartial. And remember, UN peacekeeping force is not there to fuel into the conflict. UN peacekeeping force, its only mandate is self-defense. Basically, they do not use any sort of force. They ensure that party X and party Y, they are at peace. But if there is attack on UN peacekeepers, then for self-defense, they can use force. These are three principles. But I wrote, not really here. Not really. So what does this mean? Because in 2005, R2P doctrine came. That means responsibility to protect doctrine. Now, in these cases, in certain exceptional cases, UN can unilaterally send the peacekeeping force. What are such scenarios? For example, if a state itself is perpetuating violence against one particular community, for example, a state itself is committing some sort of genocide where they are going for some ethnic cleansing, then in such case, UN has a responsibility to protect. And we have seen since 2005, United Nations has sent forces in Syria. They have sent forces in Libya, in many other countries as R2P, under the doctrine of R2P, responsibility to protect. But in general, the UN peacekeepers are deployed only with the consent of the parties, through impartiality, and they are not supposed to use force towards either party, only for self-defense, right? So these are certain conditions. Apart from that, how do I identify? See, if there are two warring factions, X and Y, X will be having their own army, Y will be having their own army. So I need to identify the UN peacekeepers. That is where the concept of blue helmet comes. The UN personnel or UN peacekeepers, they are recognized by a blue helmet or a blue beret, so that none of the parties, party X, party Y, they would not be attacking the United Nations soldiers or United Nations force. This force is there only to ensure that there is peace. And as of now, there are around 70,000 military personnel who are enlisted as blue helmets. Now, this blue helmet with the UN mentioned on it, or sometimes even that is not mentioned, there is a beret or some sort of helmet which is worn so that they get identified. Now, you must be thinking, sir, can either of the party or there is some sort of a terrorist group, do they make use of this? Yes, many times they have found out this loophole, but nonetheless, UN peacekeeping force have to be identified for sure, and they are called blue helmets. The next question, sir, what do they do? Of course, I do understand that they are there to ensure there is a transition from conflict to peace. So what do they do? They protect the civilians, they protect their own brethren, that means United Nations personnel. And please remember, when I say UN peacekeeping force, if I am a soldier, if I am Indian soldier, Indian army soldier, and I am deputed towards UN peacekeeping force, I would be first Indian soldier, then UN peacekeeper. Remember, they would not lose their nationality. It's a very important point. Apart from that, they monitor the disputed areas. Say, for example, the DMZ that has been created around 35th latitude, 35th parallel, North Korea, South Korea, an example. Observing peace process in the conflict areas. They also provide security in the conflict areas. And if there has to be an election conducted, then UN peacekeepers can be impartial conductors of those elections. They help in conduction of election. Apart from that, they also help in training and support in country military personnel. They'll be supporting, and they also assist ex-combatants in implementing the peace agreements. So in conflict zone, they try to ensure there is peace. That's the basic mandate of UN peacekeepers or UN peacekeeping operations. Now, what has been our history? So what has been India's contribution towards this UN peacekeeping? I understood that if there is conflict, not just in India, but anywhere in the world, the countries who are part and parcel of United Nations, they would be contributing their troops, their police, their forces towards United Nations, so that this force would go to some other place to ensure peace there. So what is India's role? India has been one of the prime contributors towards United Nations peacekeeping operations. In fact, this is a very strong pointer for us to bat for a permanent seat at the table of United Nations Security Council. In the past 70 odd years, India has contributed more than 2.5 lakh troops towards United Nations peacekeeping operations. The number has even gone up now. I can even say almost 2,75,000. The number would be very high even than this. Since 1948, we have been a part of more than 50 peacekeeping operations. If you look at the current number, this is the current number, India has contributed 6,097. It stands at number 3. First one is Bangladesh, second was Nepal, third is India. Indian soldiers, 6,097. They are now representing 12 United Nations peacekeeping operations. Apart from this, over the last 70 years, no other nation has lost more lives towards peacekeeping than India. Around 160, in fact, more than 160. The correct number would be 159 for the armed personnel, but if you include police, etc., and others, the number would go more than 160, which is highest for any country. That means India has given the ultimate sacrifice towards United Nations peacekeeping. Many of Indian soldiers who martyred their life, they have received medals posthumously. Apart from this, India has also sent women contingent at multiple places. In 2007, India became the first ever country to deploy all women contingent in Liberia for United Nations peacekeeping. In fact, Indian women contingent is already there under MONUSCO. That means in Congo, Indian women contingent is already there as a part of UNISFA in the Abyei region. Last year itself, we have sent one of the biggest contingent. The first contingent, the largest was this one. The second largest contingent from Indian side has gone through the Abyei region under the UNISFA. Apart from that, India is also training many people towards United Nations peacekeeping forces. As I told you, that we are going to train the ASEAN women contingent. But where are we going to train them? We are going to train them at CUNPK. It's Center for United Nations for Peacekeeping. It is an institution in New Delhi. where India imparts training towards peacekeeping for more than 12,000 trainees every year. Every year. The center, it also hosts many foreign delegations as part of sharing best practices towards peacekeeping. And in this institute only, starting this September 2023, an ASEAN contingent is going to come. 20 women from ASEAN countries, 2 representing each country. They would be coming to the CUNPK, that is Center for United Nations Peacekeeping in New Delhi, where India would be training the women contingent from ASEAN side. Right? So these are some of the initiatives that we have taken. Apart from that, very recently, the UN peacekeeping chief, right? He himself, right, Mr. Lacroix, he himself said that India is a major partner in United Nations strategy for digital transformation of peacekeeping. India has been helping towards digital transformation also. Last year, India had the presidency. India, as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, was the president of UNSC last year. And towards the end of our presidency, we started an initiative called as Group of Friends to promote accountability and hold accountable people who are responsible for the deaths of peacekeepers. Because from India, we have lost maximum number of lives. We have sacrificed the most towards UN peacekeeping. Now, here, India did this. Now, you must be thinking, sir, why there is a need of this? Why there is need of this? It's just UN peacekeeping force. They will not be doing anything. They are not putting their life on danger. It's nothing like that. UN peacekeeping forces right now, majority of them are in Africa. And you do know, of course, tough terrain is a problem, but there are so many ethnic issues in Africa that that many times UN peacekeepers, they also come in the way of danger. So there is a small assignment for you. A question can appear. The one question that we started with, what has been India's contribution? Another theme of peacekeeping can be, what are the challenges that United Nations peacekeepers face during the peacekeeping operations, and how can we improve the operational or the situational awareness of UN peacekeepers? Such questions can also be asked. So it's a small assignment for you. Do let me know in the comment section, or you can also send me your inputs on IG, right, at this particular ID at the rate Rahul Sai 222, and let me know that what are the issues that United Nations peacekeepers face during their operations, and how can we improve the working? How can we improve their working? How can we improve their situational awareness? Right? I hope you have gotten good fodder to answer the question that we started with. How has India contributed? India has contributed immensely. It is right now contributing towards digital transformation. We are trying to hold people accountable who are responsible for lives of the peacekeepers. We are contributing. We are contributing in training. We are contributing by women contingents. We have contributed more than 2.5 lakh personnel towards UN peacekeeping operations. That's our track record. Quite impressive. If there is any update on this, we'll have a discussion again. But this is the end of our interaction for today. Thank you for watching this video. Jai Hind.